Hi, my name is Uday. I am the MD of Enate India with responsibility to build the business and the brand in the APAC region. I'm doing a demo today on a loan process. It's to give you a sense of what you can do with Enate within the banking space. However, the Enate is agnostic of the industry or vertical, just like you can program a bot to operate in any kind of business process environment. You can do the same with Enate. I mean, it's agnostic of industry or vertical. Now, Enate is a service orchestration platform which has been built to manage humans and bots working together at scale. The image you see on screen is a corporate image, and that's basically got humans down at the bottom, and you can see the yellow bobbleheads, which are bots at the top. And the whole idea is humans and bots work together to move work forward. And the whole philosophy is that as this future of work ecosystem grows, you need to have a hybrid, a way of managing a hybrid workforce, and that's what the platform addresses, all the challenges and what do we need to do to deliver that successfully and efficiently. Now, today's process is what we call a loan drawdown process. So this is a cut down version of a loan process where somebody wants additional credit. There are 4 actors in this process. So there is Andy Kent, who is a manager who has responsibility for running the loan process, managing a team, and Andy might have responsibility to run other processes as well. Andy might be doing something for different customers, for different geographies, different regions, not only for loan. Andy might be working in other areas also, for example, F&A, HR, procurement, so on and so forth. Below that is Moira. Moira's job is to basically triage a piece of work and understand what needs to be done with it, which particular team he needs to go to, what is the type of process, so on and so forth. So Moira will see a piece of work and infer what needs to be done and then push it down a certain path. Below that are processors in the loan drawdown process itself. So Andy, along with being a manager, is also a processor who works in the loan process himself. Along with Andy, there is a bot called Marvin, who is also a processor just like Andy and works alongside Andy to drive this customer journey across all the different things which need to happen once a request has been raised like this. Now, work comes into Enate through many different channels. So a piece of work might come in from an email. It might come in from an FTP where somebody posts a file somewhere which has to be picked up and processed, or many different ways. We'll get into that a bit later. But on today's demo, we are going to do it by sending in an email. So I'm just going to actually do that now so that the email can get picked up by the time we are back. So that's an email which I'm sending for processing to this email address. That's got Enate loan demo. That's the subject, and I am sending some detailed paperwork, which are documents which need to be submitted as part of this application. So there's an address proof. There are some loan details which I put into an attachment, and I'm asking the business to to extend to give me a loan extension. So that's gone. Now, coming back to what's going to happen in the process is that piece of work is going to land in front of Moira. So Moira is basically a triager. So Moira will pick up that piece of work, have a look at it, make a decision on what needs to be done. She will understand it's part of the loan process, and then Moira is going to launch this. Now, this is what we call an orchestration. It's the process model of what needs to be happen now. So the orange bars on top are what we call steps. Steps are logical groupings of the types of activities which need to happen at each stage. So under the steps are these blocks, the blue blocks down below. These are what we call actions. You can think of them as activities or tasks. So the first activity is a customer validation activity, which is, you can see there's a human icon against it in the blue. So that means that's going to get given, a piece of work is going to get given to somebody in a human team saying, validate that this is a valid customer. So the person might look at the attachments, might validate a few things and make sure that is a legitimate case to give a loan to. Once the human has confirmed it and given it a go ahead, it's going to move on to the computation phase where it's going to get given to a bot. And the bot in this case is an automation anywhere bot, but it can be a UiPath bot, a Blue Prism bot, or any other vendor, to be honest. But what the bot is going to do, it's going to take that piece of work and run it into its underlying systems. So it might having some, might be having some line of business loan processing systems. So we're calling it a loan calculator, where it might do some heavy lifting, do some number crunching, and then once it's done and happy with what can be done, it hands it back to a human for verifying the transactions. So the human goes through it, checks that the bot has done everything correctly, and once the human gives it a approval and signs it off, it moves forward to another bot saying that import all these transactions. So the other bot might take those transactions and then import it into various underlying finance systems. Now the last activity of this import is going to fail in this demo, and that's basically going to we're going to see how humans can handle exceptions when tech goes wrong. So that being said, I'm going to now move out from here and we'll go and have a look at the product. Now this is the login screen. So Enate is accessed through a browser. It's a SaaS platform. Now there is a on-prem version as well if you want, but primarily the main model is through SaaS. Now Andy's going to log in here. Now this is Andy's login page. Andy's a team owner, like I said. So once Andy logs in, this is what Andy sees. I'm going to describe the screen now. So down at the bottom here are all the different pieces of work which are running right now, which Andy and Andy's team have responsibility to deliver. Now these can be from different customers, different geographies, different types of business processes, so on and so forth. In front of each line item, there's a due date. This due date is something which is auto calculated based on simple business rules. For example, you can say something like if a piece of work comes from geography X or customer Y or this kind of process or this kind of keywords it has, then we need to finish it off or turn it around in 3 hours, 5 hours, 4 days, so on and so forth. Now that is configurable based on what kind of business rules you have. How stuff comes into this grid is through many different channels. We call them input channels. Now in a lot of environments, people sit and wait, look at Outlook boxes, wait for something to come in, or maybe look at a file system, wait for somebody to put a CSV file there, a notepad there, so on and so forth. but they pick up that then once something is available and then they distribute it to a team. You might have other situations like you want to expose a chatbot on your website or somewhere else, and once the chatbot has interacted with the customer, understood what needs to be done, then it wants to launch a piece of work inside back at the back end, which can then be managed. Or you might have a situation where you want to give something to your users on a smart device like a mobile, and you want them to launch something, track it, and understand its progress within the service environment. Or you might have other upstream systems from which you want to launch a piece of work, and you might even want a bot like an RPA bot to do something and then launch something in here. Ultimately, behind this grid is a standard web service REST API, and you can have any product make a web service call, launch a piece of structured work in here, which can then get processed through. What Andy can also see as a team manager is that some of these items have got a bot icon against them, and what that tells Andy is that Andy's digital team members are going to pick those up, not the humans, and whatever doesn't have that goes to the humans. On the right top are all Andy's human team members. Now this is everybody who is a part of the team which Andy owns. In front of each member of the team there is a donut with a number inside, and that donut tells Andy how many pieces of work each team member of his is working on at that point in time. So that's all real time. So in this case, Moira has got 3 pieces of work in her inbox. Rebecca has got 2, Jim has got 1, and Andy himself has got 2 as well. Everything in the product is color coded to red, amber, green. So what that says is that what that tells Andy is that how many pieces of work are running behind schedule. That's the red. Green is stuff for which we still have time, and amber is stuff which is due today. Now, so that's essentially saying that Moira has got 3 pieces of work, of which 2 of them are on time, and 1 of them Moira is running behind schedule. Now, obviously, you can click on one person, see what they're working on. So Andy has complete visibility across the human team. Below there are bots. Now, a lot of businesses have not yet started their automation journey, so they may not have bots. If they don't have bots, they may not see that section. If they do have digital workers as well, then they see the bot section as well. In this example, we have got 2 bot farms. There's an Automation Anywhere bot farm, and there's a UiPath bot farm as well. If I click now, what Andy can see is against the Automation Anywhere bot farm, there's an exclamation mark. So if Andy clicks on that, Andy can see that something is not right. So there are 3 bots in there. So just like Andy has got visibility of Andy's human team members, Andy can also see his bot team members, out of which 2 are offline, 1 of them is idle. Other pieces of relevant data are that this bot team of 3 have got 2 items in their queue to process. So those are the ones down below here. And this bot team has got about 20 minutes worth of work remaining right now. And if those things are, once those things are complete, then these bots are going to go idle. So Andy can then plan what else can be sent to the bots, so on and so forth. And by the way, since the bots are down, Andy can also raise a P1 with the tech team so that they can, bring these bots back online. In the meantime, Andy can progress. Now, down at the bottom here is unassigned work. So this is work which has made its way into the service environment, but has not yet been picked up either by a human or by a bot and is available to be processed. So Andy can start planning what needs to be done. Now down here at the transactions, you can see there are 2 things. One of them is amber, one of them is red. So that means that something has not yet been started and is already overdue. And there's something else which is available to be done. Being amber means it's due today. So if I click on that, then I can see that this is the loan process we sent out just now. So this is the Enate loan demo. This has got an SLA which is an hour from now. So ultimately, we want to make sure that anything which hits the flow is actioned within an hour, and that's why we've given it a due date like that. Now, there's also a whole lot of useful information on top here. I can look at this information to get an understanding of how we're doing in terms of what all we're doing for different customers or different service lines or different queues. We'll come to queues a little bit later about what that actually means. So the first thing we said in our process, if I just go back for a second, is a piece of work came in and that has to be done by Moira. So if I go back here and I'm just going to log in now as Moira. Now, Moira's job as a triager is to come in, work on things and just move them forward. She doesn't manage a team, so she doesn't really see any of the other information there. Now, I'm going to introduce another concept at this stage about allocations and how they work. So that should give you a sense of what are the possibilities. Now, in a lot of traditional environments, there is push-based allocation in use. So when something comes in, somebody like a team owner picks it up and then does some sort of round robin or some other algorithm and gives it to a team of people who will process that work. Enate has that model, but it's not the default because it is not good for load balancing, in the sense if somebody gets stuck with a piece of work and if they've got 5 other things in their inbox, then there's a cascading effect on everything else, and that's not good for your timeliness or optimization. So what Enate does out of the box is pull-based allocation. So pull-based basically means anybody who's available to do a piece of work, whether a human or a bot, tells the system, I'm free now, what's the next thing I should work on? Enate does a scan across everything which that user is authorized to do, picks up the one which is the most time critical from an SLA perspective, and puts that piece of work in that human user or digital user's inbox. How Moira does that is by hitting this button, which is called pull from queue. And what the system does is checks what's the next most time critical thing which needs to be given to Moira, and then Moira works on that. So the one which was overdue came first, so I'm going to hit pull again, and this is the piece of work which lands in my inbox. This is the Enate loan demo which I sent out today. So I'm going to explain what Moira sees on screen. So down in the central section here, it is contextual email of everything, which context about the entire email which came in. So that's the email body. I can read the email, understand what it's about, and make some assessment. On the right top, Moira can see a bunch of things. One is when this was created. So it was created on the 2nd of May. So that's the first piece of work. First piece of information. So when this came to us. The next below that, I can see classification information. So Enate automatically classifies and categorizes a piece of work, like I said, based on different types of business rules. That can be which email address something came to, which domain it came from, what keywords are there in the subject, or various other simple parameters like that. What Enate cannot do is read the context of an email and make deductions based on it doesn't have any natural language processing capabilities, for example. But what you can do is plug on an engine like that, just like an RPA bot. You can plug on an NLP bot and extend out the platform just as another digital worker. In this demo, Enate has basically seen that it's gone to this particular email box, POC box 1. Based on that, Enate understands this is being done for the Bank of People, for the London geography, and based on that information, Enate has also given it a due date of some time out from now, saying that this piece of work needs to be finished by this time. Now below that is tracking information. Now, simply because Moira has opened this piece of work and is working on it, Enate has also switched on an effort clock on it and is tracking how much time is being spent on this particular activity. Now, the whole idea here is that you get a real-time view and an automatic view of how much time as an organization you're spending on different types of activities, and then you can drive various kind of productivity and efficiency improvements from there. If you want, you can also give out a benchmark time. So as a business, you say every time a piece of work is given like this to a user, you want it to be done in approximately 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so on and so forth. This is optional. You can switch it off if you don't want to do it. But but the whole idea is that it then gives an indication to somebody doing a piece of work about how much time they're expected to finish it in. I'll just come back to this other detail section. Or you know what, we'll just fill it now. So Moira reads it, understands that this is for London, and it's a type of loan drawdown piece of work. So other details is essentially custom details which you need, or your process specific data points which you might need to drive a business process through. Now these are configurable ultimately. Below that is any attachments. So everything which comes in as part of a piece of work is all consolidated, and attachments are centrally maintained here, and you can of course open that from here and read it and understand what needs to be done. So that's something which is landed there. Below that is defects. So you can log various kinds of defects with every piece of work. For example, whether the customer didn't send something, whether we made a mistake, whether we got delayed somewhere, what went wrong. You can kind of manage all the defects along with the transaction and then ultimately report on it, so you can get improvements over time. Another couple of points and then we'll move on from this view. There is email. So another problem which businesses face is that a lot of emails are managed from different people's personal inboxes, and that has a big impact on visibility and understanding where each piece of work is. In Enate, all of that, you stop doing all of that, and Enate becomes your main comms platform as well. So you put all your templates, can text, everything inside Enate, and then users centrally manage all outbound and inbound comms from here. There are various benefits to that, ranging from being able to measure what is the kind of interaction like, to being able to understand how much time, what were the delays, whose end the delays were, to having an entire audit trail, so on and so forth, to bringing in complete visibility ultimately. I'm going to talk about merge and split briefly. Merge is a situation where you might have different pieces of work which you're managing as duplicates. You want to put them together, run them as a single piece of work. And split is where you have a single piece of work, which, for example, along with this loan process, a customer says, send me a checkbook as well. And your checkbook might be being managed by a different team against a different SLA, and you want to split it out into two different pieces of work and send them across different teams. You might even have the checkbook routine, for example, automated by bots, and the loan routine still in the human world, so you can manage those as independent transactions. In this example, Moira sees that this is part of the London geography, part of loan drawdown, and Moira is then going to go ahead and say start this particular case. So what Moira is essentially doing is this, and what's going to happen is that the loan drawdown process is going to get launched. The first human activity called customer validation is going to be created, put in a human users queue. So let's just cover the topic queue, and then I'll just start this, cover the topics queue, and then we'll see how things progress from there. So go down here and say start case, and I'm just going to pick up the case ID from here. I'm going to go back to the manager view. I come here. Then this is the piece of work which came in as a ticket. This was then used by Moira, reviewed by Moira, and what we launched is a case on the loan as of the loan drawdown case type. Below that, the first activity called customer validation has been created. So that's this activity has been created and now is ready for processing. So if I just at this point go and look at the case view, I can see that this is done for the Bank of People, for the London geography, for as part of the loan drawdown process, and the first activity which has been created under it is customer validation, and this has been put in the operations queue. So let me just cover queues quickly now. So these are what we call queues. So queues are basically skill groups. You can think of them as skill groups. Queues are where we, connect which kind of resources can do which type of work. So if you look at this, for example, there's the stats report queue, and that's got these three human users as part of the queue, which means everything in that queue can be performed by these three individuals. If you look at the bot processing queue here, you can see there are 4 bots against it along with a human. And the reason for that is the Enate platform understands that these are the 4 bots who are going to do this kind of work. And Steve Smith is the human who has the same skills as the bots. So the bots go down, Enate automatically understands that, and instead of sending more things to bots, routes that into the human world so that your BA is not affected and you can still make sure you're doing things on time. Now, this is a business. I mean, everything you're seeing in Enate as a product, Enate is designed for business users, not for technical users. So you're kind of empowering your operations and business users to be able to manage their teams, their processes and all efficiently. And what that means is you can allow your business users to move just like you move people around between different teams depending on workload. You can say, for example, I want Moira to be a part of this particular queue, and if I hit add, Moira is going to get added here. Just like that, you can even manage bots. So you can allow business users to move even bots around for loaning bots around if there's peak, so on and so forth. Bots do need to have that skill, but we'll see if it doesn't have how that exception is handled. But ultimately, you're giving the freedom to the consumers of the bot throughput to be able to manage where they deploy them and how to do them. On a usual basis, you won't move people and bots around like this on a day-to-day basis, but if you need to, you could. So what we are seeing here is that the customer validation piece of work has now landed in the operations queue and is available to be picked up and processed. So if I go to my inbox now, this is the piece of work which is available, and we saw Andy is also a processor in this particular work. So Andy is now going to pick up that piece of work and process it. So Andy comes in, logs into the system today, and Andy says, what is the next piece of work which I should work on? And Andy hits that button, and what I get here is the customer validation activity which has been given to Andy now. Every time I give a piece of work to a user, I can also give them some checks. Now checks are basically instructions. So you're telling somebody how to do a piece of work. Now to complete this activity, Andy has to perform these 4 checks in the product. One is, are the maturity conditions checked? So Andy might go to another system and make sure that he has validated them. And he will also make sure that the interest rate is the correct interest rate. Then Andy might go to another CRM type of system or any other customer central master system and make sure that the customer's signatures are valid, it's all legit to process. And the last thing is Andy might update that data, excuse me, into a customer master. Once Andy does that, Andy hits yes, and then Andy would go and hit complete. These are the other data pieces. So the bot, so now it's going to get given off to a bot. It's going to go to the loan calculator activity. The bot is going to do the heavy lifting, come back with an ID saying this is what I've processed, and feed that back to Enate here, which is then going to go back to a human for validating. Now I'm just going to bring in the bot view. Now this is a bot running on a server somewhere. I'm going to bring up the bot view, and you're going to have to look carefully because the bot is now going to get that instruction from Enate. It's going to perform some activity and return the outcome back to Enate. So, and then I'll come back and explain what's just happened. So if I hit complete here, and if I go back to my bot environment, now an AA bot is running here. It's just received the piece of work from Enate, and the bot is now processing that piece of work, and it's completed. What's happened just now is that, let me just go back to the right view, and if I refresh this here, so what's happened is Andy completed the customer validation activity. Then the next piece of work, the loan calculator piece of work, landed. So that's this piece of work landed back in the bot queue. That got picked up by Marvin, the bot. Marvin processed this, which we just saw on the bot environment. Marvin completed it, and Marvin has returned back saying that I am done. This has landed back in the operations queue now for a human to validate this transaction. So if I go back as Andy and I say what should I work on next, then Andy's got this verify transactions activity, and he's got the loan ID here and an instruction here saying go and validate the transaction. Andy now might go there, look at that ID, go back, search for the ID, check everything's happy, and say yeah, all looks good. So Andy's going to hit complete, and if I go back now here and refresh it, I can see that Andy's work is done, and I can see that there's some next piece of work called import operations, which has landed back in the bot processing queue. If I refresh this again, then we should be able to see that Marvin the bot has picked it up and is currently processing it, and I can see that this has been rejected by the bot. So the last activity which was given to a bot or a machine, the machine was not able to do. Now a couple of things. This machine-human interaction model is standardized across different technologies. So whether it's an RPA bot which has failed, an OCR bot which has failed, an ML or AI, sorry about that, or regardless of which type of bot technology, if the bot fails, it flips back that piece of work into the human world, and then the human can decide to deal with it in one of many different ways. Now, the ways a human can deal with it are exactly similar to how you deal with a human team member, a new human team member. So let's say you're mentoring someone and they come in and say that, you know what, we can't do this piece of work. Then you might say something like, can you just go back upstream and start a piece of work from there? Because we made a mistake upstream, that's why we can't process it now. You might say something like, look, I don't know what to do. Why don't we ask the business? Once they confirm, then let's progress it from here. You might say, you know what, I just gave you the wrong data. So let me give you the right data. You go and try it with this, you should be fine. You might say, you know what, just leave it, go on and work with something else. I will do this piece of work because I just know how to do it, or I have more experience with this, or something on that line. Or you might just give it to somebody else and ask them to process it instead of that person or that new hire. Now ultimately you can have all of these interactions with bots as well. So you're literally treating your digital workforce just like you treat a human team member. In this case, and how Andy gets to know about this is Andy doesn't have to watch this, since Andy has responsibility for this kind of work. If Andy goes to Andy's inbox and looks at it, then suddenly something has logged up, has kind of landed with a red tag against it. If Andy opens that, then Andy sees that that's got a that's a piece of work which was given to the bot, and it says that there was a target system which was not reachable, and based on that target system not being reachable, Andy understands that that's why the bot couldn't do it. So Andy might pick up this ID from here, go to the target system, check it himself, and if Andy's happy with it, Andy might come back here and say, yep, I'm happy, that's all done. And oh, sorry, I'm just resubmitting it by mistake, I think. And if I go back now here and look at that piece of work and I refresh it, I can see that it was the team leader who did something, then Marvin the bot did something else, then the team leader did something else again. We previously had Marvin here who was not able to do that piece of work, and if I come back now, I can see that Andy has instead done it. Now this is giving me a complete view of all the different activities done by which kind of actor. If I go to the timeline, I have a complete history of everything which has happened. When a piece of work came in, what we responded, what were the emails, what were the attachments, who it went to, what they did with it, whether it was a human user, whether it was a bot user, how much time they took to do it. All of that information is centralized against the transaction, so you have absolute visibility from an audit compliance standpoint of understanding how everything has been progressed within the business. So from a solution perspective, I think that was the main thing to cover. Ultimately, you can run a business process across this human and digital workforce and flip-flop between them in a very, very seamless and easy way. And that's what we've just covered. Now in a separate session, I'll just cover a little bit about the MI and what you can do with that.